Good evening and welcome to Illinois Learn to Hunt's webinar on Turkey Hunting 102. So this is the companion course to Turkey Hunting 101 that hopefully some of you were in, that Dan and Jason did not too long ago. This one goes right along with that one. Continuing to admit a few people coming in here, but we will get started. So a little bit, here's the outline of 102. We'll talk a little bit about wild turkey ecology. We'll talk a little bit about the noises that these birds make out there. We'll talk through some decoy placement scenarios and some different hunting strategies, including some of the most common issues that crop up for turkey hunters, like dealing with henned up toms, whether or not to get real close to the roost, things like that. So we'll go through all that and more, and then hopefully have a little bit of time at the end for some questions and answers. All right, first off, let's talk a little bit about some wild turkey behavior. And right now, we're still in the winter, although we're kind of in the yo-yo portion of winter, where some days you go outside and it feels like you should be sunbathing, and some days you go outside and you want to keep that snow shovel handy. So we're right there. So basically, the turkeys are still in their winter patterns, and just to kind of talk about what they start doing in the fall, they're going to start to kind of join up in these larger flocks, and that gives them a little bit more protection from predators. But the main reason they do that is because as we get further and further into fall and winter, the food sources that are available start drying up, and they get more and more concentrated. So the insects that they were feeding on in the spring and summer start to decline. The next food that really gets on their radar is acorns and different hard and soft mast things like that. So might be berries, might be acorns, things of that nature. But in Illinois, white oak acorns are probably the number one most important thing for turkeys in the fall. So we're gonna find them in the woods. Once we get into the winter, which right now, in February, we're solidly in the winter. These turkeys are in really large flocks. You might see a flock that's nearing 100 birds this time of year, and that is birds from all around that are getting concentrated on the very last remaining food source out there. But pretty soon we're going to be getting into the spring, summer kind of behavior, and this is exciting. As it warms up, the turkeys, this is when their natural breeding starts to kick up. So all of their hormones start to heighten, and also this coincides with resources starting to become available everywhere. So this is gonna happen very, very soon as all the new emergent vegetation really starts popping. The insects are going to emerge as well, and then it's going to be a smorgasbord for these turkeys. They no longer have to be in these large groups on this concentrated food source. They can spread out and each have their own kind of nesting area. So the males, as their hormones start to increase, you're going to see them fighting. So February is a good time of year to be driving around and just see a flock of turkeys out in a field, and you might see a couple of toms puffed up and kicking their feet at one another, and that's their way of fighting, establishing dominance. Who gets to stay, who has to go. All right, some other key behavior and attributes for wild turkeys, and I kind of already mentioned that they breed during the spring. So this is different. All of our deer hunters know that we always tell everybody, hey, you want to be in the woods in late October, early November, because that's when the deer are really getting excited about breeding, which in deer is called the rut. Well, in turkeys, this happens in the springtime, and hence that's why we have a spring season to take advantage of this really cool behavior done by this tasty bird. So during the fall, they feed heavy, very little gobbling, almost never gobble. You will occasionally hear them gobble, but for the most part, behavior's completely different. They're not going to be doing all that gobbling and strutting and spitting and drumming like they do in the spring. They are most actively feeding during crepuscular hours, so that's dawn and dusk, even though turkeys are diurnal, so that's the opposite of nocturnal. Being birds, like most birds, other than like owls and goat suckers and things of that nature, they are active in the daytime, and so you won't find them at night at all. They roost up in trees, which is a good thing to do, but it's always amazed me that turkeys are ground nesting birds, and yet they fly up in the tree every night. They know when it's nighttime, fly up in the tree for safety. I don't understand why they don't also put their eggs up there in a tree for safety, but anyway, that's an argument for turkeys, not for you all. So anyway, other than the turkeys' downfall, some of the good things are they really have keen eyesight, even better than deer, I would say. Their hearing is pretty good. They're not going to smell you like a deer does, but holy cow, can they see? Not only can they spot movement like you wouldn't believe, but they can also see color. So that gives that an added degree of difficulty over deer, because we can't use blaze orange, and you really can't get by with any weird colors sticking out. So you got to make sure you're camo from head to toe for turkeys. Now let's go through some of the most common vocalizations, and we'll play each of these that are recordings from actual turkeys, so we'll get a chance to hear these. Now, we do not talk about calling in this webinar specifically because we've got an entire webinar for that. So if you are somebody who's interested in learning to turkey call, and we hope that you all are, because that's one of the most fun and interesting things about turkey hunting, hopefully you'll sign up for that. It's another free webinar coming up. I actually don't have my calendar out, but maybe Lauren can look up when that is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but we will have that turkey calling webinar coming up with spots open, so feel free to sign up for that as well.
Thursday.
Thursday, there you go. Oh yeah, we just talked about that. Thursday. I was thinking that was the Turkeyology, which is another fun webinar we've got coming up that's gonna
That
kind
one's
of
March
really,
5th. The
yeah,
Turkeyology
dive.
one is March 5th.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I had those two mixed up. So Thursday for turkey calling. So there you go. You won't have to wait very long. Here's the gobble. So this is obviously the famous sound. This is what the toms are known for. This is a sound that only the males or toms do. You will hear, so a male turkey, a lot of times we will call toms a mature male turkey a tom. Immature male turkey we will call a jake. Both jakes and toms do gobble. If you hear a lot of those, you can start to really tell the difference between a tom and a jake gobble. We really only have a tom gobble here on this presentation, but a jake gobble just sounds like, imagine yourself trying to learn to do a gobble call on a diaphragm call, right? You're probably going to start off a little rusty. Jakes generally trail off at the end and don't sound like a very good gobble. And the toms have a more complete sounding, rapid gurgle gobble that sounds like this one we're going to hear in just a second. But the gobbler, he's using it to communicate with the hens, let him know where he is, let all the other gobblers know where he is also, and that's his spot. You can get a gobble call from the stores, and I do carry one, but we always do like to mention that be cautious about using that, especially after the sun is up and especially on public land, because remember, all the hunters are out there listening for a gobble. So if you're out there making a gobble, you're just as likely to call in a hunter as you are a bird. So definitely use these sparingly. It can be a really nice locator call occasionally when nothing else seems to work. Now I prefer to use an owl hooter or a duck or goose call or a crow call personally, because it doesn't impact what the turkey's doing. If I just want to locate him, I'll do one of those calls, and hopefully that will make him do a shot gobble, and then I know exactly where he is. But every once in a while, I've seen this a few times in my life where they don't answer any of those, but for whatever reason, if you do a gobble, that's enough to elicit a response. So for that reason, and that reason only, I carry a gobble call, but you will not see me use it very often. Here is what it sounds like. Wow, so excited, just music to my ears. That's it sounds pretty cool when you hear the recording, but really nothing matches when you hear that in the woods and it's within, 200 to 300 yards. It's a special kind of sound, and I've never been elk hunting, so I've never got to hear an elk bugle close distance. I'm sure that is even orders of magnitude more cool. But for what we got right here in Illinois, hey, turkey's not too bad. Now, here is the most common communication that you're going to use as a caller, the yelp. So this is kind of the standard, and gobblers and hens will do this. So we are generally trying to imitate a hen when we do yelps, but gobblers and jakes can yelp as well. They're a little bit coarser than a hen, but they will do this as well. But this is kind of the basic. Think about it as just the turkey's hello, how's it going? Just the very general, natural communication that we would do if we were walking through the hall and you saw a friend of yours. Yep, hey, how's it going? That's a yelp. So let's go ahead and listen to this. So that's a very common Yelp sequence. So you can obviously, when you're calling, you can do that more aggressively and a little bit louder. You can do that a little quieter, especially early in the morning when the birds are still on the roost. Right when they first start calling, they call very, very soft. And so I really like to start off really, really soft, like you almost can't hear it, and slowly kind of build up the intensity. Let's move on to the next. Now, a cluck, the yelp, if the yelp is more of a, hey, how's it going? A cluck is just kind of a little bit more emphatic. And these are short, staccato little notes that if we think of the yelps as, hey, how's it going? Clucks are more like, hey, what are you doing? Something a little bit more aggressive, if you will. So here's what they sound like. So, because these notes are a little sharper, you can tend to go out a little bit more distance, or if it's windy, it can be really hard to hear against the wind. Clucks that are a little bit sharp, staccato, they tend to cut through that wind a little bit better than anything a little bit more relaxed.
We have a question, Curtis.
Sure.
Is there any worry that a putt can be made when trying to cluck?
Um, sure, but when calling any of this stuff, a lot of it comes down to intent. And we'll talk about this more in the calling thing, but you as a caller need to try to make sure and have the right intent with what you're doing. And that's going to sound a little bit weird because you're going to be like, I don't even speak turkey. And that's okay. All you need to know is like, do you need to be angry and loud? Do you need to be soft and romantic? Or do you just need to be alerting your presence? And as long as you kind of have that, I think like people who are actors and actresses, they usually say like, "What's my motivation?" It's kind of that same thing. So if you have that same idea in your mind, I feel like it's not very likely, even though the two notes are really close. So the question they're talking about a putt. An alarm putt is a lot of times used right at the time of shot to get the bird to stretch out its neck, and that would be just a like a putt putt, two little putts real close together. And a bird who's strutting will stretch his neck out real far because that's an alarm putt, and that's the perfect opportunity to get a clear shot. And I don't know. I've never really seen it happen, and mostly it's because that putt putt is a quick emphatic thing that I almost feel like you gotta be doing or gotta be trying to do to really do it. Otherwise, it just kind of sounds like a turkey noise, if that makes sense. But we'll delve into that definitely more in the turkey calling webinar and experiment with that a little bit. But
And in case
this
anybody's trying to make a bunch of notes on this, I did throw a link to a downloadable PDF that has a chart with all of this. Like Curtis said, we'll go into this more Thursday, but it's got all of these different kinds of vocalizations and what they mean, when to use them, when not to use them. So don't freak out about it. It takes time. And don't worry about writing it all down if you don't necessarily want to.
Well, hopefully you're not writing it all down. I would get a cramp. I remember that back from my college days. The first couple weeks. Holy cow, my hand would be hurting so
Yeah, I
bad.
already did that work for you. There's a chart. Just use the chart I already made in that PDF file. Just go download it. It's
Well,
further up in the chat.
here's a sound that callers always want to know how to make. It's called the key or the key run. Generally, this is a sound more useful in the fall than in the spring. We really don't hear it in the spring because this is generally immature turkeys, and we just by the spring the poults from last year are old enough that they don't seem to do it, and everybody's kind of moved on to their own thing. Also, they're not in the big group, so it's not. I feel like the key is a good call when they're in a big group, just to make sure they all stay together. So, good call for the fall. Maybe not necessarily the most useful in the spring, but hey, it can make you sound more diverse. But here's what it sounds like. So there you see, it sounds a lot different than these other turkey calls that we're hearing, and that's why callers generally want to learn it because it demonstrates range. But definitely, this is a call that knowing it does way more in like competitions than in real life hunting scenarios. So don't be worried if you can't get that high pitched sound on the old diaphragm call. No, no worries. Here's the purr. Now this one is nice. There's multiple different ways to do it. We'll talk about that on Thursday, but the good thing about the purr is it's really hard to mess up, and it's just a quiet, nice little confidence building sound that you can use when you're not quite sure where the bird is, or if the bird's getting fairly close but might be, able to see you, pick you out. Some kind of soft purr that you can do on the mouth call is a good low impact call to do that you don't really have to move or do anything to really alert your presence to the turkey. So here's what it sounds like. Now there you can hear those turkeys scratching along. I imagine them scratching, looking for maybe acorns, maybe insects, whatever they're looking for, and just purring. They're happy. It's a turkey sound that can make the birds at ease. It's easy to do. It's not going to carry long distances, so nobody is going to call in a bird from several hundred yards by doing purrs. But when the bird gets close, hey, this call is your friend. Now, a cut. This goes along the same lines of earlier talking about the cluck of being a very sharp note, but this is going to be put together in a sequence that generally is going to get a lot faster and then it get slower. So a cut sequence. We'll go ahead and listen to what this sounds like. So again, great at cutting through the wind or cutting through good distances because it's a really sharp note. But this is a call that can really be getting birds excited. And we'll talk about a decoy setup here in a bit that's kind of a fighting simulation setup. And these kind of really loud, elaborate cuts mixed with some loud, coarse purrs. Those are the types of calls that would be mixed into a fighting decoy setup, or even used without decoys to simulate a fight for birds that are far enough away from you that they can't see where you're at. All right, decoy placement. So we're going to talk about some different strategies here. It's going to depend on a few different things. Time of year, what's available to you, the type of birds that are where you're at. But I like to go ahead and just mention from the start, I have not used a decoy turkey hunting in a long, long time. I started turkey hunting without a decoy, and then I did get a decoy after 3 or 4 years, and I used it for a couple years. I did probably get a couple birds over it, but I felt that it personally messed me up more than it helped me, and so I never used a decoy again. So that's my personal preference. I do move around a lot. I'm a very mobile hunter. Decoys can be an awesome tool, and especially if you're somebody that wants to hunt a very specific spot or in a blind, decoys can definitely be helpful. They can also really take the eyes off of you, which is awesome. If you've got something out there that can collect the eyes of oncoming birds, that is a huge advantage. Because most turkey hunters, and obviously I don't think there's been a study on this, but if I had to guess, most turkey hunters mess up their first couple shots before they ever get a bird. And maybe they don't even pull the trigger. They either get spotted when they're trying to move to get on the bird, or something like that happens, but it is not easy. So having decoys that can slow that bird down, get its eyes off of you, I definitely will agree. There are a lot of benefits, but for me personally, it's not the style of hunting for me. Now, here's a little diagram. If you are using decoys, this is how you want to use them. You want to try to put the decoy beyond where you are so that the bird will be fixated on that decoy and walk right past you, giving you a good shot. The reason you want to put it beyond is because every once in a while, it's not super common, but you may encounter a decoy shy bird that gets close to your decoy, but maybe is hesitant to close those last few yards. By putting it beyond you, that bird is likely still going to be within your good shotgun range. So that's the way you want to use them. And this little diagram is a good reason to show why I don't use them. Is because I would get busted a lot of times trying to put out my good decoy setup. You know, when I was carrying around that decoy, I like to do a hunting tactic called run and gun on public land, especially if I have a large area to cover. I will just be walking over appropriate habitat, and every 100 yards or so, I'm going to pull out a call and hit a yelping sequence and hope to hear a gobble. And when doing that, a lot of times those birds, if they're excited, they're going to come in fast. And there were several times that okay, heard a gobble. I'm going to really quick run out there, put my decoy, and then run back. And then I'm sitting down just in time to see the turkey running away because he saw me do all that. If I would have just sat down after hearing him gobble, I could have called him in. He was already excited. What do I need the decoy for? But anyway, obviously, I'm not a decoy salesman. Okay, I've already mentioned this enough, so we don't need to talk about that too much more. But you're already using a call to sound like a bird as long as you're near cover, which I always am. I'm never going to be in the middle of an open field. I feel like there's always an opportunity for that bird that's calling to be just out of view. So I don't think hunting with no decoy is a detriment really at all. That being said, they can help in certain circumstances, but you know how I feel about it. Now, the very least intimidating decoy setup, if you're going to do it, is what's called the feeding setup. And this is just going to be placing a decoy that's feeding, so it's very content. And this is important because you don't want to put a single decoy out with its head up, because that can look like a bird that is alert, and the bird that's approaching might be like, oh, what are you watching? What's going on? Is there a predator around here? So having a nice bird with its head down is going to be the most calm that can be. And you can either use a hen or a jake here. There's different schools of thought. Obviously, if you use a hen, no bird is going to be afraid of that. But I would say if you're going to use just one decoy, I would go with a jake decoy. And the reason is it's not only does it seem to work better at bringing birds into you, because remember, the natural kind of ecology of turkeys is the gobbler goes to a display area and he displays and he expects the hens to come to him, right? Like he says, hey, look at me. I am so mature and so fit. You want me to fertilize your eggs. And the hens come to him. So while a hen decoy can work, it can also make a gobbler just stand out there and display and be like, all right, you'll come to me if you're ready. Whereas if you use a jake decoy, that's a completely different response for that tom. He's like, what are you doing here? This is my field. This is my spot. I'm bigger than you, higher on the food chain, all these things. He's going to come in wanting to fight. And when I did use a decoy, I had a jake decoy, and the times that it worked, sure, it's exciting because the bird comes in wanting to fight, and turkeys tend to not I don't know the right way to put it, but it takes them a long time to discover that it's a decoy. I mean, they will straight up have a full on 3 round boxing match with that thing, and it'll fall over, and they'll still be kicking it. So you can definitely get some good footage by doing that. Okay, if you go up a little bit in intensity, aggressiveness, do a walking harem setup. And this would be using a mixed sex flock. So you would have a hen or two, and they could be feeding or with the head up. Just, I always make sure that if you're using multiple decoys, it's always good to have at least one or two that are very relaxed. You never want all of your decoys to be head up and all look like they're alert, because that's not a good way to keep birds relaxed. But in this setup, you're going to always put your male bird, so your Jake or your Tom, behind your hens, and a lot of times they will either be strutting or semi-strutting. This one here in the pictures utilizing a real fan, which makes it look even that much better. There's a lot of decoys like these available. You know, I already mentioned I'm not a big decoy user, but obviously I watch a lot of turkey hunting videos, and it really doesn't seem like you need to buy the most expensive decoys out there. And maybe for some birds you do. Maybe when they get decoy shy, realism really plays a bigger factor. But for most of the birds out there, it seems like if you have a somewhat realistic decoy, it's going to be good enough. So save your money and buy the little bit cheaper decoys for turkeys. And if you're going to splurge, splurge for better boots or more comfortable camo that's going to keep you out in the woods longer. Is always a better thing to spend your money on than decoys, in my opinion, or a really nice knife. You can always find something good, but just make sure your toms are behind your hens, and again, set your decoys beyond where you think the turkey's going to be, so that they walk right past you. And you see in this picture the blinds can be awesome for turkeys, but that one to me stands out pretty good. Now, if the hormones were really going, the turkeys may run in, especially if they were used to blinds being on the property in that area. Probably not a big deal, but if I was putting out a blind on public land in a new spot, I would never put it out where it stands out that much. So I want to put it out in a way where if I step away from it and look back, I'm like, where did it go? Can I find that? I'm lost. I got to look at my GPS to figure out where I put it. That's what I want. Not that. So just want to point that out. That level of camouflage may not be very realistic. Now, fighting setup, this is what I mentioned earlier. Now we're taking the aggressiveness up a notch, and we're going to put out a couple of Tom or Jake decoys, or one Tom, one Jake, and square them up. And a lot of times we're going to accompany that with some aggressive calling. They do sell like dueling, I forget what they're called, but they're like these little push button fighting purrs, and they have two of them. So you can do one in each hand, and they're each a little different pitch, and they really give you this sound of two birds fighting. So you'll couple the decoy setup with these loud, aggressive purrs and cutting calls. And this is kind of the equivalent of back in, maybe you remember in middle school or high school, when the bell rings and somebody yells, "Fight!" and everybody runs to see what's going on. This is kind of the same thing. So I view this as almost like a Hail Mary when you're hunting. So this would never be something that you would pull out on day one, especially if you can hunt multiple days. But if you're on the very last day of your hunt and you're pulling out all the stops and nothing else has worked, This can be one of those Hail Marys that works when nothing else does. Breeding setup is right along those same lines, just obviously without the fight. This is a love setup, not a fight, but it's the same kind of idea where it's really aggressive and really trying to play at these birds' emotions. So in this, they have what's a breeding hen or a submissive hen decoy. So this hen is laying down in front of the gobbler, and the gobbler is right behind her in that position. This is going to drive a bird crazy, especially if it's a big tom who thinks that he is the biggest, strongest bird in this home range, and he sees another bird in this breeding position with a hen. That's going to kind of be like yell and fight, but the fight's going to be just starting. So another aggressive setup, another one that I would not do on day one, but a good one to pull out on the last day. So, some other considerations already talked about. You don't need the most expensive decoy, but you can also spruce up your decoy. Maybe you buy a really cheap decoy and you think all of it looks good except for that fan. Well, guess what? That's one thing that you have access to as a turkey hunter, hopefully from previous harvest after you're fortunate enough to get one, is you're going to have wings. You're going to have fans. Some of those you may want to display in your house because they're pretty. You can remember the hunt. Some of those you may want to use in a decoy to make that more useful. Definitely do that. A lot of turkey hunters do. One thing that I will mention right here is this act that's called turkey reaping. This is something we definitely do not recommend. This is where you take a fan, and a lot of people will mount it right to their shotgun and kind of walk behind this fan as a way to get close to turkeys. This is really dangerous in Illinois. I mean, anywhere, because you're trying to look like a gobbler in a place where a whole bunch of people are trying to hunt gobblers. It does not sound like a good idea to me. You can watch the YouTube of people doing it. It also is not extremely difficult. If you have a good fan that you can sit behind, it's one of those things that kind of it flirts with crossing the line. Is this fair chase, or is this kind of utilizing a loophole in the bird's ecology to kind of swoop in and just get within gun range of it? I don't know, but we don't recommend reaping at all. A safety concern and also a fair chase concern. So double whammy, double whammy. And even if you're not reaping, just remember that if you're carrying decoys in and out of the field, especially gobbler Jake decoys, that looks like a real bird. You really need to have some orange that you can put on there. Or I have a turkey vest, so when I did carry a decoy, I folded it up and put it in my vest so that no part of it was visible, and then still had some orange that I could pull out while I was walking. Just make sure you tuck those in before you can hunt, because unlike deer, turkeys can see them. All right, let's get into a little bit of strategy, and this is generally my primary strategy, hunting near the roost. Now, a lot of people will scout. You can go out the night before and try to put a bird to bed, as they say, or try to roost a bird, and all you're doing is trying to go out in the evening right before the sun sets, knowing that the bird's going to fly up to the tree sometime between 10 minutes to 30 minutes after the sun sets. And generally, when they do that, they let out a lone gobble. So, if you can be in the area and hear that, then you can generally get a pretty good idea of where that bird is roosted. He should be in the exact same place in the morning. Now, roosting the night before is not always practical, and I'll tell you, it's definitely not always needed. You can do the same thing in the early morning, just obviously you'll need to wake up a little bit earlier to give yourself more time. You also are not going to, you'll have less time to come up with a plan B or plan C if needed. But I've done this many times where I haven't went out the night before. I'll just go out. Let's say that sunrise is at 6 a.m. just to make it easy. That would mean 30 minutes before that is 5:30. That means in a normal situation, I really want to be set up, if possible, by 5 or close to it. If I'm going out there to scout too, I really want to be about an hour even earlier than that, knowing that I need to try to hear this bird and then have time to make a move on it. So I'll try to get out there at least an hour and a half, 2 hours before shooting time, knowing that it might take a little bit for that bird to gobble, because they're not just gobbling all night. It'll take something, and that's when you can pull out your owl call. Or a lot of times if you go out there and just wait a couple minutes, if you're in the woods, you're going to hear an owl, and then just listen. At some point when we get close to morning, after one of those owl calls or after you do an owl call, that bird is going to gobble. And when it does, you need to make your move. And the more of that move you can make before we get to any amount of sunshine showing at all is going to be in your favor. Because turkeys, the whole time they're roosted, they're used to hearing things walking underneath of them, and it does not spook them as long as it sounds natural and they don't see you as a human. So when I'm really trying to get out there early in the morning, also giving yourself that extra time allows you to walk less like a human. And what I mean by that is don't just walk direct. Humans have a tendency to walk through the woods like this. Just steady, direct. That's a very predator way of movement. No prey moves like that. They can't. So if you just change it and just walk like this, step, step, stop. Step, 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 stop. Take a few steps, stop. Take a few steps, stop. If you walk like that and it's before sunlight, you can walk right up to the tree that the bird's roosting in and sit down if you want. Now keep in mind, we don't shoot birds from the roost in Illinois. I think they say at least you can't shoot them from the tree until a certain time period. I would argue that it's never good to take the shot in the tree from a turkey. We're trying to put that shot in the head and neck. And if that bird is way up ahead of you, that is going to be a hard spot to hit. So whether or not it's legal, even if it's later in the day, definitely shots on the ground are the way to go. Alright, so if you know where the bird is roosted, your next thing is, well, okay, which way is he going to fly down? Most of the time, and this is not 100% because nothing is ever 100% with animals, but most of the time, turkeys, gobblers, are going to fly down the same way they flew up. It's a path they know. And so if you're able to see or hear them fly up, then you probably have a good chance of knowing exactly how they're going to leave out of there the next morning. If you don't see that, there's some clues you can use. One of them is if there's topography, they tend to fly to the high side. And mostly that's because, well, just imagine if you were a turkey up there and you were flying down. Would you fly down to the side that looks way, way far away? Or would you fly down to the side that looks a little bit closer when you're not the best flyer in terms of birds? And, I shouldn't make fun of them because, hey, they can fly. I can't fly. So they're doing a heck of a lot better than me at that. But when it comes to birds, they're not the best, most elegant flyers out there. So they tend to fly down on the high side. Now, some of you are being like, topography, this is Illinois, what's that? So you may not have topography. In that case, look for the opening. Again, turkey is not going to want to fly down into super thick cover. They also don't want to fly down and land anywhere where they can't see. They need really good visibility at their head height. And when they're feeding, remember that their head is down there by their knees. So if they're really being picky, they want really short cover to be, short cover, but they want woody cover around them. So try to find that a good opening where they can land, and if there's heavy brush in other places, you can generally narrow down which way they are going to go. But sometimes you're not going to know. You just kind of got to pick. And if you guess wrong on day one, hopefully you've still got day two and day three. So as long as you don't alert the bird, as long as it's not game over because you've scared the crud out of them, you can keep hunting that bird. You live again to try again on day two and day three with more information. Now, one thing also we want to mention here is turkeys are absolutely famous for hanging up on the smallest obstacle. It could be a fence, it could be a creek, it could be just thick brush, a road, it could be anything. And you're like, dang, I know you can fly. I just seen you fly out of the tree. You can't fly over that little creek. You can't fly over that tiny little fence. For whatever reason, they do not like to do that. They will, but more times than not, they're going to get hung up at that barrier and they're just going to decide, that hen's not worth it. I'll find a new one.
We do have a question,
Sure.
which is, can I practice locating turkeys in the off season with owl or crow calls?
It doesn't work. It only works when the turkey's hormones are high. And so, just like with deer, that's photo period driven. So, really, it's only going to start to work here in the next. I mean, you can try it. As far as I know, there's no laws against it. Um, Trying to think. Yeah, I don't think there would be any laws against trying locator calls in the off season. But yeah, I feel like we're gonna have to be pretty close to spring for it to work. Otherwise, think about it in the fall. We hear owls all the time. How many gobbles do you hear? Almost never. So most of the time in the off season, when they hear that stuff, they're not gonna gobble. But I don't know of any laws against it. Now in Texas, they do have some laws where you can't do any bird playbacks, and that's mostly for other birders, so they don't hear a bird and count it on their life list. I don't know of any laws like that in Illinois, though.
Yeah, I know sometimes they get upset with like wildlife harassment, but I don't think for this, I don't think that counts.
Yeah, I guess that would be the other thing is, yeah, an owl call is technically a predator that could be wildlife harassment if it makes all the little birds get scared because they're like, oh man, there's a big scary owl around here. So I don't know. That might be a good question for a CPO or a local area manager, but
Try it in your backyard first, I guess. I don't know. Start small, maybe see,
yeah, yeah.
ask someone, we're not here for legal advice.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a question I haven't heard before. But anyway, so if you got this is where a topo map can be really useful. If you don't have a topo map, if you've got a phone, they've got all kinds of awesome mapping systems now, whether it's OnX mapping or Hunt Stand mapping. You can get topo maps as part of that. You generally pay a fee for the whole year. But then you have access to all these cool map tools for all the properties that you hunt that can help you out. One thing you want to avoid, though, is you do not want to scare the birds. It is possible, especially once that sun comes up, if you're trying to get too close, get too greedy too late, and you scare that bird off the roost. I mean, kiss him goodbye. Not only have you severely messed up the hunt for that morning, at least with that bird, you better hope there's another bird around, but that bird may change his roosting area, his behavior for the foreseeable future. Which, since in Illinois we're just getting one season segment, we've got like 5 days, you're not likely to see that bird again for the rest of the season. So always, always hunt conservatively. Stay back and slowly work your way in, because if you get too close and mess it up from day one, you're really gonna give yourself an uphill climb. Birds don't want to leave the roost when it's night, because they can barely see. A lot of times, if they leave the roost at night, they have to go somewhere and just kind of sit there until the sun comes up and they can move around, because they can't really find a lot of times another tree to get up in at night, because they don't have good enough eyesight when it's dark. If you have to use any lights at all, use the red style flashlight. Now, it's best to go no flashlights at all, but if you have to, using a red light tends to not spook game. I still would not use it real close to the bird, but definitely on your approach, a red light is the way to go. Now, here's an example. We got two parking areas on this public property, and we hear a bird gobble in that location. Now, for me personally, I would choose the parking lot up here to the north, is where I would go. Both of these might be about the same distance walk. The north looks a little bit closer, but the nice thing is I know that northern lot, I've got that entire tree line, that entire draw between me and the bird, to conceal my approach. So I won't need to be really quiet and stealthy until I get close into that woods. That would be where I would choose to go. And if I first parked down at that southern parking lot and I heard the gobble way over there, instead of walking all that distance and potentially getting there too late and spooking the bird, drive up to that northern lot and see. If you don't have time to get in on them while it's still dark, you can at least get around that woods and just hunt the edge of that woods there, knowing that that turkey's either going to go north or it's going to go to the west, because it's not likely to go to the south right where that road is. You don't exactly know what's to the east there, as it's not on the map, but that would give you a chance. But that would be my strategy if I pulled up to that wrong lot and it was in a place where I just didn't have a good clear approach without being in the bird's plain view. Now, when I'm hunting near the roost, and this is probably why I generally don't use decoys, this is when I will say it's a good time to leave the decoys at home, because that extra moving around to have to set up the decoys when you're already trying to get somewhat close to the roost. And I'm not talking about, you don't have to get 20, 30 yards to the roost, but even 100 yards from the roost, that bird is going to be close enough to kind of see you moving around, hear you moving around, and trying to put those decoys out just gives more of an opportunity for them to pick you out. Concealment is really the key when you're hunting any kind of birds, whether it's ducks or turkeys. You have got to be concealed. They have really good eyesight, and it's colored vision. They can also see UV, so they can even see more colors than we can. But movement is the big thing. And if you think that you can be sitting there with like your gun on your lap and that turkey's 30 yards away, and you think you can slowly grab that gun and get it to your shoulder, Most of the time, no, you can't. And that's why most new hunters get picked out their first couple shot opportunities. I know I did before they ever even get to touch that trigger because turkeys are way more, I guess, apt to see that little bit of movement than deer. Part of it's because you're on the ground almost always with turkeys, never up in a tree. But even on the ground, I've gotten away with a decent amount of movement with deer. You don't get away with any of that with turkeys, not at all. That's why blinds can be a huge help, but if you're trying to be very mobile, a blind is a big heavy thing that you've got to carry around. So a lot of times I'm not using it, but there certainly are situations where I'm like, wow, I wish I had a blind. All right. Now, when you get set up, hopefully you're set up before this picture was taken because there the sun is already peeking up. So now we're 30 minutes after shooting time there. But anyway, don't ever be the first thing to start calling. If you set up, you know the birds are there, have your calls out, have them ready, but wait and let them start the show. That just keeps everything natural. I generally like to hear the birds call and try to match them, and then just keep doing the same thing that they're doing, so I can kind of get to where I sound like I'm just one of the birds in the flock. I just get integrated in there. And you can't do that if you're the first one to call because you don't know what to match. Now, when the birds are in the trees, they do call very soft. So you'll want to use your softest, quietest call. I know I've got a pot call that's made out of aluminum and it's really soft and quiet, and it's one of my favorite calls, as well as just my diaphragm call because it's one I'm comfortable with and I can get real quiet on that, and obviously doesn't require any movement that the birds can see. Very soft, and just try to match exactly what they're doing, and then pay attention to how the birds are reacting. And this, I used to watch this famous turkey hunter by the name of Rob Keck. He used to give these seminars on turkey hunting, and he would call it taking the tom's temperature. And every time he would make a call, he's listening intently to what does the tom do. Does he ignore it and not respond at all? Does he gobble immediately? Does he gobble a little bit after? Is he really emphatic? If you pay attention to all that, Rob would what he calls taking the tom's temperature while he's still in the tree before that tom ever lands on the ground. He kind of knows what the bird wants to hear, and he kind of has the bird already worked up. And that's a great tactic. And it's something you never really know what's going to work. But as long as you're calling quietly and just trying different things, maybe you just do a yelp sequence, a little yelp, 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 and nothing happens. Maybe you do a little per cut, and all of a sudden the bird goes wild. You're like, okay, I'm onto something here. Maybe you just keep doing that. I mean, don't do it too much. You don't want to do too much of a good thing, but you got to play a little bit hard to get, as they say, but don't ever let it go too long. Give that bird reason to be excited, and hopefully come down and get in your lap. I say that you don't want them to get too close because I actually missed my first turkey ever here a couple years ago on Illinois public land because it came down and got right in my face. I think it was 7 steps away, and I was shooting it with extra full choke, and it was probably about the size of a baseball, and I guess I was right over it or right to the right to the left, something like that. But having the turkeys a little bit further away than 7 yards is ideal. Now, if you are not hearing birds, but if you're just walking around scouting, sometimes you can find their likely roost locations just by finding feathers, scat, things like that. You can also see where birds are moving, and you can actually tell the sex of the bird by the scat. And here's a good picture, and it's easy to remember because the gobbler scat is in the shape of a J. So remember Jake. J for Jake. If you see, it's kind of typical bird scat, but bigger than most bird scat. And instead of being like a liquid, like most of the songbirds in your yard, it's more of this solid nitrogenous base. But the gobbler is a J shape, and the hen, it's that little coiled shape because they just have a little bit different anatomies, a little bit different cloaca, since the hen is got oviduct and different plumbing in there. Her scat looks like a curlicue, and the gobbler's looks like a J. Now, if you don't find scat, there's other things that can tell you what it is. All you got to do is find a single breast feather. If the breast feather has a black tip, it's a gobbler. If it has a buffy tip or, a brownish tanny tip, that's a hen. You can also look at the tracks. And size on tracks can be misleading because mud can smear, tracks can change a little bit in the sun, drying, wet conditions, all that. But for the most part, if you see toes that are a middle toe that is over 4 inches, you're dealing with a tom. If you've got a middle toe that's under 4 inches, you're probably dealing with a hen. All right, so here's some different scenarios that happen to a lot of hunters, and these happen all the time. You can find countless magazine articles written about some of these things. But here's kind of the way that we handle all these different things. So, what happens if you're out hunting and the tom leaves the roost and starts coming in your direction? This is good, right? This is what we want. And sometimes this is you're calling to the tom, he's gobbling, you're calling, he's gobbling up in the roost, and then all of a sudden he flies down and he's quiet, and you're like, uh-oh, what's wrong? Sometimes that's because he's coming to you in a full run. And gobblers can't call when they're moving. They gotta kind of stop to do that. So if they're really excited and coming to you in a run, they're going to be quiet. So hold still and keep doing what you're doing, because if you were doing a certain communication that was getting that bird riled up, keep doing it. Just remember that he might be getting closer and closer, so don't do it too loud. Keep it soft. Another thing that can happen, this is what we call a henned up tom, is he goes with real hens. And maybe you see him out in the middle of a field and it's your gobbler that you were talking to all morning, and there he is standing out there with 3, 4, 5 hens. What are you going to do in that scenario? How do you call a bird away from multiple real birds? Well, there's no way that you can sound like the Marilyn Monroe of turkeys and somehow convince this tom to leave multiple real hens to come to you. So what I generally do is change it up and start calling to make the hens angry. And generally there's going to be one hen that's called the boss hen, and this will be whatever hen is the oldest, most mature hen. She will kind of speak for the group. And if you hear her yelp exactly like she did, but a little bit louder. And every time she makes a noise, do exactly what she does, but a little bit louder, a little bit more emphatic. And just think about if you were to do that to a friend of yours, right? Like a friend of yours was like, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? What are you doing? You copying me? What are you doing? You copying me?" Like, think about how agitated you would get. That's how you can get those hens agitated, and then at some point, hopefully, she's going to be like, "All right, that's it. That's the last straw. I'm coming over there. I'm going to rip all your feathers out." And then the whole group is going to follow, because obviously they want to see what's going on, right? So that can be a good tactic. If the tom is henned up, try to really irritate the hens that are with it, and then the whole group comes over for a hen fight, and hopefully you get a shot. Another thing, the tom just gets hung up. So you may not even know what it's hung up on. You hear it answering, it's coming, but then all of a sudden it's not getting any quieter. You hear that it's still excited because you call and it calls. You call and it calls, but it's in the same spot. You heard it getting closer, 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 and then it stops. Well, now, your best thing is going to be to move if you can. If the bird is far enough away that if you can pull up your map, if you've got Onyx map or Hunt Stand map, you pull it up and you see, oh, I see that there is a creek, a small creek there, or I see that there's a road there, whatever it might be. If you have an ability to make a move and get on the other side of whatever is keeping that bird hung up, that could be a great thing to try. If you can't do that, you can go with one of these more aggressive strategies, like trying to do a simulated fight or something like that, that can maybe be enough of an appeal to make the bird fly across the creek, river, or road, whatever it's hung up on. But if you've got more days to hunt, just remember that that obstruction is there. And on the next day that you're out there, make sure that you get on the same side as that obstruction as the bird. So that might mean you have to bring waders and cross a creek. Um, might mean something like that, but hey, if that gets you a bird, it's worth it, right? So, you may never see the birds or hear the birds after the roost, they're just gone. In that case, a lot of times I'm going to switch to what I talked about earlier, the run and gun method, where I'm just moving through appropriate habitat and calling about every 100 yards, every 200 yards. And if I get a response, in general, the later you have a tom respond to you in the day, and remember, we can only hunt till 1 o'clock, but the later you get an excited tom in the day, the more likely that tom is going to try to get to you. So, good thing. And another thing, you never hear or see a bird all morning. So, this happens, um, you know, if you knew that there was a bird there and you never saw, a feather of them, it's possible that you spooked the bird. In which case, that would be the worst thing because that's going to affect how it interacts in that area for not just that day, but for the foreseeable future. It also could be that the birds weren't there right then. That would be another thing. But if you don't hear or see anything, all you can do is go to something like the run and gun method, or sit in an area where there's been sign, you're seeing tracks, feathers, scat, turkeys are in the area. You can just set up there and wait, but those are your only two things. You either move around and try to get a response, or wait somewhere where you've seen sign, where you know they hang out at least occasionally. All right, henned up gobblers. So, we talked about this, but if you know you're hunting a henned up gobbler, like you're hunting multiple days, here's some of the ways that I would go about trying to combat that. First would be just get in as tight to the roost as possible, because that bird is still going to fly down, meet up with all the hens, and then head out to the fields. Once they get into the middle of the fields, you're not going to get close to them there. If they're in the middle of a great big field and the edges of it aren't even within shooting range to the middle, guess what? They're pretty safe, and we have a whole lot of fields like that in Illinois. So my first thing, I would try to get out there extra early and get as close to the roost as possible without spooking them. Other thing, I already mentioned this, got to agitate the hens. Agitate the hens, and that'll bring the tom in along with them. It's the same thing that we talked about with the middle school or high school fight. They just want to see that hen fight.
Curtis, we got a
Now you can
question.
also, yep.
Sorry. So this person says, I know we must end the hunt at 1 p.m. So can you not hunt them at all in the evenings, as well as such a sunset? Sorry, that's a little confusing.
Yep, that's correct. We can only hunt until 1 p.m., so there is no evening hunting for spring turkey in Illinois. Now, there may be specific sites that have more restrictive hunting than that, but yeah, nobody's going to hunt after 1. Now, that is Illinois specific. If you go to Wisconsin, just one state away, they do hunt all day. So that is a state by state thing, and it's also a spring and fall thing. If you turkey hunt Illinois in the fall, you can then hunt in the evening and in the morning. And yeah, there's all kinds of different regulations. But for the spring season, it is a 1 o'clock closure. So they do give the birds the evening as kind of refuge time so they can get to their roost safely without being disturbed. Okay, so yeah, we would go with this aggressive strategy if we had the hind up gobblers. Something like this might be make him angry enough so that he does abandon those hens and come over. Not because it may not be just because of the one hen that's being bred, but mostly because he's angry. Why is this other Tom or this other Jake in an area that he knows is his, So he's going to come over there and try to just kick the tar out of that Jake decoy. So that can be one of your Hail Marys to pull out if you're hunting the hind up gobbler. Also, you can try if you maybe for a morning or two you just haven't had luck off the roost. Try a mid morning hunt. Don't even go out there until 8 o'clock. Um, Sometimes those gobblers go down and they hang out with those hens for a couple hours and then they realize, these hens really aren't ready to breed yet. And they might abandon them at some point and start calling, and then you might be able to sneak in there and find them around that midday lull. So, like I mentioned before, the later a gobbler responds to your calling, I feel like the more likely you are to get him excited and really get him coming into you. Okay, so if you do go out there mid morning, you would this could be kind of your run and gun sequence, as you would just go out to what you know is good habitat and just let out a yelp, usually a yelp sequence. You could do clucks, but usually people will just use a normal yelp sequence, just yelp, 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 and then do it a little bit louder and a little bit louder. Do that 3 or 4 times. Wait around for 10 or 15 minutes and move. Do the same thing again. Wait a few minutes and move. And keep doing that until you get a response or you run out of hunting time or area, whichever comes first. Now, adverse weather. So, obviously, we all know that April and May are just well known for being very consistent and mild in Illinois. No, obviously, that's a joke. Obviously, April and May, we never know what we're going to get. So, it might be a little bit less volatile than, say, February, but there's a lot going on, and we may get days that are just absolutely beautiful. Generally, those, as you might expect, are your best days for turkey activity, turkey noises. Really, we want a calm, sunny, nice day. But we only get a short season segment, and on top of that, most of us only have certain days and times that we can hunt. So basically, hunt when you can. If you only have a couple days to hunt and it just so happens to be adverse weather, you don't have to say, well, just burn that tag. I'm not going to get anything. you can still go out there and hunt because turkeys do not get a chance to take days off. They're still going to be out there doing stuff, and sometimes adverse weather can make them a little bit more predictable and could even swing some odds in your favor. So let's talk about some of these. First off, rain. So Illinois averages about 8 inches of rain in April and May. So there's a good chance that at some point when you're hunting, you may see some rain. Um, Now, what this is going to do, it's going to make the birds be way more quiet. They may fly down way later than you're used to. They may fly down after shooting time. It could be well after shooting time. And it may really reduce the amount of activity and change the places that they hang out. So this can be frustrating because it makes birds quiet. If you haven't done some pre-scouting so that you already know where the birds are, either by roosting them or finding sign like tracks and scat and all that, this can really make it tough for you. So the potential of bad weather really highlights the importance of a little bit of preseason scouting, or at least the night before scouting if possible. Now, another thing is wind. Wind has kind of the same effect as rain, where it can make them be quieter. It also just makes them harder to hear. You know, you cannot hear them at all against the wind, so you may have to use louder calls. You may have certain calls that you only use when it's windy. And again, just like the rain, this could delay their fly down from the tree as well. Thunder and lightning. So we mentioned that turkeys can't take days off, but you can, and lightning is the one thing that we always say, don't mess with it. About 10 people get struck in Illinois each year by lightning, which obviously that's not a huge amount, but it's a 25% fatal thing. So it's not something to joke around with, and if you were out walking around the woods with a shotgun, that kind of looks like a lightning rod to me. I mean, I don't know. So I would not do it. If you see lightning nearby, that is a really good and fine excuse to abandon that hunt for that day. Now, if there is not lightning, maybe if you just hear some thunder far off, you know, and you're still okay to hunt, thunder can actually make them shot gobble. So I'm not going to say that it's better than an owl or a crow or anything like that, but certainly sometimes in the spring you'll hear a low rumble of thunder somewhere in the distance, and then gobble 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 gobble. You know, 2, 3, 4 birds all gobbling in succession right after that. So it could be a makeshift shot gobble for you to keep tabs on where those birds are. But again, don't mess with lightning. Not worth it. All right, some additional tips, and I think I got a slide after this to illustrate this, but never shoot the bird when they're strutting. You ideally want to have that bird with its neck fully stretched up, so you've got a great view of its head and neck, which is where we want to shoot them with shotguns. You know, this is shotguns, not archery method shotguns. A lot of people will do what's called the double putt that we talked about a little bit earlier, as a way to get a strutting bird to stretch its neck out. So that can definitely be a method that you do, but do not take the shot when the bird is strutting. It's not a great shot, and it also puts a lot of shot into your breast meat potentially. And you'll see this slide here in a second, but do not overcall in general. More people call too much than too little. So less is more. You don't have to sit there and just call into the void every minute, every second that you're hunting. You know, just hit a call sequence once every 10 or 15 minutes if you're sitting somewhere stationary, and that should be fine. Always pattern your gun with the shells that you're going to be using and the choke tube. You work hard to try to get a turkey within your effective range. You do not want to mess around and not be using an effective shell and choke tube combination that's not going to give you a good effective range. So know that before you go out. You're putting too much time and effort into this to mess up when you get that far. That's the worst thing. If you do everything right, you get the bird in, and then you take the shot, and for some reason you don't have the bird. So always pattern your gun. I know it can be hard to find a place to do it, and I apologize for that, but gotta try to find a way to do it. I know. Bring more shells than you think. Everybody thinks, oh, I'm only going to need one. I'm only going to need one. And hey, guess what? 90% of the times you are only going to need one. But try to at least have 4 to 5 with you because you just don't know. It can happen. Like I said, I missed my first turkey ever here a couple years ago. And luckily, I had another shell or two with me because I was able to get another shot at a bird, and I did not miss not long after that. So if I wouldn't have brought those shells, then I would have been in a not that good scenario. But don't be afraid to move, even if you got the whole blind out. Being mobile for turkeys is generally a good thing. Just use what's out there to kind of keep things between you and the bird, and generally you can move in on them and give yourself an opportunity. It's kind of, we talk about how squirrel hunting is kind of similar to elk hunting in a miniature way. Turkey hunting's a lot the same ways. You can do a lot of the same things that people do elk hunting, turkey hunting. Be mobile, calling to an animal and getting a response, so that two-way calling, and all those same methodologies work well. So don't be afraid to move around out there. Right, decoys already mentioned, not needed, so don't worry. You don't have to have every piece of equipment. You don't have to have every single type of call out there. But if you do have pot calls, don't forget the maintenance for them. You need sandpaper to scratch them up if it rains, or if you accidentally touch that surface and get your oils on it. It's not going to work until you scratch it back up. Need your chalk for your box calls along the same lines, and if you're using diaphragm calls, always bring more than one. Not only could one get lost on you, but sometimes, for whatever reason, one call they respond to and another they don't. I don't know if it's just a little different pitch or what, but always good to have multiple options, and diaphragm calls are cheap. You can put your box call right down into a glove, or put a rubber band around it to keep that thing from squeaking in your bag or in your pouch as it's rolling around. Don't overcall. When the bird is close, let it do its thing. If it's strutting and displaying, just know that's because your calling's working. It's trying to display to get that hen to come to it. It may move slow, but as long as it's coming towards you, let it come, do its thing, and really watch it. If the bird starts getting antsy, spooky, maybe it caught you moving a little bit, you're going to have exactly like 1.5 seconds to get off an effective shot, or that bird's going to be gone. So watch it. Is it comfortable? Is it not comfortable? Constantly be looking for that. But after you shoot the bird, you do. Everybody's heard of a chicken with its head cut off, right? So even a turkey that you have shot and just completely obliterated its head, it can move around quite a bit after that. So most people, after shooting the bird, I like to run out there, and generally I'm wearing, good pants, because remember, turkeys do have spurs, but go ahead and just stand on the head. Keep your hands and everything up and out of the way, because it's going to flail around for a little bit, but stand on the head, help dispatch it quickly, and make sure that it doesn't move anywhere, because you can actually shoot a turkey, completely obliterate it, and it can move around in some brush and get away from you, be hard to find. So don't let that happen. But make sure to put your safety on first. I know adrenaline will be pumping, but as soon as you shoot that bird, it goes down, safety on, and then go out there and
Don't throw your gun. Set it down.
yeah,
Just don't like just toss it.
no,
And look
never
out for these
never throw your
spurs
gun.
because like Curtis was saying, when you go to stand on it, don't watch out where those are.
Did somebody throw their gun?
No, but I could see that being a thing. You know, if you're like adrenaline's going, just don't throw it. We do have a question. Are you using your Blaze Orange every time you move or are mobile?
That's a good question. A lot of times I'm not, so I'm only pulling out my blaze orange like when I'm walking in, walking out. But that's going to be up to your discretion, I guess. If there's a lot of other hunters around, and especially if you're having to carrying around decoys, always better be safe than sorry. So I would always use orange, I guess, in those scenarios. But generally, for me, once I'm there and a lot of times I kind of have a feel for where hunters are, and hopefully you hear them calling. And a lot of times you can pick out, okay, that's a hunter, that's an actual bird, that's a hunter, that's an actual bird. If you kind of have that idea, then I start to feel a little bit more comfortable if I'm moving in on a bird not to pull my orange, because I kind of want to be ready to be in camo hunting mode at an instant's notice, because I've had some times where I'm walking around and all of a sudden, boom, there's a turkey, and I've just got to sit down and try to get a shot. So, yeah, that's a long way to say that no, I'm not pulling my orange out every single time, but any single time that I think there might be other hunters around, I would say yes, it's a good idea.
I feel like it's not a bad idea too if you're going to be messing with your if you've got decoys out or if you get a bird and are carrying it out. Good
Oh
ideas
yeah,
then.
for sure. Especially, yeah, like Lauren said, you're carrying a bird out. Now you're carrying exactly what everybody else is trying to hunt. Like you definitely, that's a great time to have some orange to put on, and you know you're already done. So it doesn't matter if every turkey in the whole woods sees you. Yeah, definitely pull out the orange at that time for sure. Okay, so here's that picture I added. So yeah, the picture on the left, that bird is displaying, strutting, beautiful, gorgeous, but don't take the shot. Not only can you not shoot that without probably getting a whole bunch of shot into the meat, but really it's not as good of a shot. That bird on the right stretched out like that, when you shoot it, on top of probably getting pellets through stuff that is going to be instantly fatal, you're also hitting the head with basically like a lead fist, and you'll just break the neck. So even if your pellets don't hit anything vital, your lead wad hitting the turkey's head and neck when it's stretched out like that is going to break the neck and be a good solid shot if you're in your good effective range, which for most people with an extra full turkey choke, 35, 45 yards, no problem. Some people with some of these TSS loads are even going further beyond that. That's why always pattern your shotgun to know your effective range. Me, myself, I've shot quite a few turkeys. I've never shot a turkey over 30 yards in my whole life. Most of them have been 15 to 25, and generally that's what you can expect if you're calling them in. But yeah, that's right where I like to aim with a shotgun, right where the head meets the neck, so kind of right where the feathers meet the more skin of the head there. All right, so just to kind of wrap it all up here, you can continue trying to locate toms, throughout the day, and at 1 o'clock, your turkey season's over. But after 1 o'clock, guess what? You can still roost birds for the following day's hunt, and while you're doing that, you can hunt morel mushrooms. generally turkey season coincides with when morel mushrooms are fruiting in Illinois, which is only going to be a 2 to 3 week period each spring when that soil first reaches like 50 degrees during the night for a couple days in a row. And if we have enough moisture out, morel mushrooms are going to pop up anywhere they have mycelium built, and that's generally going to be around old elms or ashes or apple trees or sometimes cedars. And yeah, that's a hoot if you go out turkey hunting and also get a big old bag of mushrooms. That's a pretty good, not quite surf and turf, but I guess you would call it fowl and fungi. Pretty good dual meal that you can get right off the Illinois landscape out there. So pretty good. And even though we can't hunt after 1 o'clock, there's still some fun things we can do in the woods while we're trying to roost them.
We do have another question, which is
Sure.
if you prefer a 12 or 20 gauge.
Oh, that is completely up to you. I would say there's really no drawback to a 20 gauge. Yes, a 12 gauge is going to have more pellets in there. It's a bigger round. But turkeys, since most of the time we're shooting them, they're not moving. They're standing still, hopefully, or not moving very fast. So really, you can put your bead right on them and pull the trigger. There's a lot of people that get specialty turkey guns in these sub gauges, which I know for a long time wasn't available in Illinois, but a lot of people are going to 410s and 28 gauges with some of these tight turkey chokes and TSS loads, and they're small guns. So no drawback to a 20 gauge whatsoever. That being said, if you've got a 12 gauge, that's what you got. Hey, that's great. That's what I use, but only because that's been my main gun for everything for pretty much my whole life. So
I'll say
both are
I use a
awesome.
20 gauge and it's mostly because everything I use is 20 gauge, but also it's got the best sling of my of our shotguns. So if I'm going to be moving a lot, it's the one I like best because it's the best to carry.
Yep. And since I like to be mobile, I do like the idea of a smaller gun. I mean, I've always used my 12 gauge just because it's what I've had. But if I was gonna like buy a turkey specific gun, I would probably get, yeah, the smallest one that I could. Because why not? These days with how good ammo is, but good question, good question. But we would be remiss if we did not mention NWTF, National Wild Turkey Federation. So, those of you that have been to hunt camp, maybe you've joined NWTF or learned a little bit about it. But NWTF is it's a national group, but you can find them all over Illinois, and it's a group all about turkey hunters and people who care about turkey habitat. So great opportunity to meet like-minded people, meet friends that you can potentially hunt with, maybe even find a place to go. Who knows? There's a lot of local chapters all across the state. You can check out those links either on Facebook or on the NWTF page, which is www.nwtf.org. So yeah, joining them, great way to meet people, find new places to go hunting, but also supports conservation and the turkeys that we all like to go out there and pursue. So win-win by going to their stuff. You know, Dan, our coworker, is a big NWTF supporter, and if you wind up at hunt camp this year, which isn't set yet, but it should be in late September, like always. You can talk to Dan about NWTF and find out all about it right there at hunt camp. He's usually there selling calendars and whatnot from NWTF and talking about what they do here in Illinois.
We do have another question, which is if Illinois allows lead shot.
Yeah, so that's going to be area specific, but as a statewide thing, yes, lead shot is allowed in turkey hunting, but you will find a lot of public land areas, especially any one that's like low in a river basin or primarily a wetland area. They may be non toxic shot only. So definitely check the area specific regulations. But if you're on a site that doesn't prohibit lead shot, or if you're on private ground, you are allowed to use lead, yes. Good question. But other than NWTF, we are Illinois Learn to Hunt, and we basically try to help adults in Illinois any which way that they might need help getting into hunting and trapping. So we know it's not easy to get into hunting and trapping if you don't have friends and mentors to do that. So we want to be that for you all. We know that you can't just take a webinar one time and then you come out and you're all of a sudden Stephen Ranella, professional hunter, out to take on the world. So definitely feel free to follow us on socials. We've got a whole bunch of Illinois specific webinars and educational videos that'll help you in your hunting and trapping journey. You can send us questions, comments, pictures. We always like to hear from you all. And like I said, we know that it's tough out there to get into hunting when it's not something you grew up doing. So we want to be your helper, your mentor, your friend, whatever it is that can kind of help you along that journey and make it a little bit easier so that you can kind of get on the inside. And we've already went through a few questions, but if anybody else has any other questions, now would be the time. Otherwise, we hope to see a whole bunch of you in the turkey calling webinar that will be this
Thursday.
Thursday, 6 p.m.
I did throw a link in the chat as well to a downloadable turkey hunting equipment checklist. It's helpful for if you're planning to go hunting, so you don't forget anything important, but also if you're just getting started, it's kind of a good overview of some of the stuff you might want to think about having.
All right, not seeing any other questions. So, thanks everybody for showing up. Like I said, hopefully see some of you all on Thursday. And on Thursday, feel free to bring your calls because we will be actually playing with calls and doing all that stuff on Thursday. So that'll be the time that if you've got dogs or cats or other indoor pets, we will try to drive them nuts on Thursday.
And if you think of any other questions, feel free to reach out.
Yep, and we'll have this recording available
Yep,
here
we'll
at
send
some
it out.
point in a day or two, and we'll send it out to you all. But, yep, thanks for coming. Hope everybody has a good evening.